Welcome everyone to the presentation tonight on Grief 101. My name is Jackie Calder and I'm a counsellor here at Skylight. So welcome, and it's an honour for me to do this presentation tonight, and I hope that you can all take something away from this, perhaps that you may have not have known previously, or just something that may really connect with you. So before I start, I'd just like to acknowledge and recognise that the different stages that you will all be at in this journey with your children with cancer. And I know that some of you will still be in treatment. Some of the children will still be in treatment. Some may have finished. And I also acknowledge that some of you may have lost a child during this cancer journey as well. So tonight, and I want to start to just acknowledge that I am not an expert on child cancer, but I do, I bring tonight my experience and my work that I have done with children and families, and also my compassion. And so tonight the webinar is really around a presentation on grief. It's gaining a deeper understanding on grief, our grief responses, and how to best support ourselves and our families. And I will touch too on coming up to the holiday season as well, and some ways that we can manage through that too. So understanding and talking about the grief process can help in a way of providing a framework or a structure for us to turn to when things can feel really overwhelming and out of control. Sometimes the understanding of what happens when we are grieving and that process can be reassuring. It can be, it can sometimes feel like when it all feels overwhelming and it's all going a bit crazy and we can feel like we're going crazy. It's sort of like going to that place where it feels like an island of calm in the storm, like we can go back to that framework and understand what is happening for us. And at the end of this presentation, you will see the Q&A on your screens. So you are very welcome to put any questions in there that you would like to ask of me, and I will try my best to answer them as best as I can. So I will do that at the end of my presentation. And I think in acknowledging that I am not an expert in this field, but I also really am aware that the Child Cancer Foundation have great supports and information that can support you, and also the right people that they that can provide the support you need to as a family on this journey. No, I'll start the slideshow. It starts. So the part of looking at the grief in the holiday season is finding some light through the holiday season. So what is grief? A mix of thoughts, feelings and reactions when we are faced with any kind of difficult change or loss. Grief is a normal and natural human response to loss in our lives. It's the intense sorrow that we experience following a loss, and it is a normal and necessary process that requires time to work through. It is a way that we adjust to loss in our lives. And grieving, and as a family, when you have received a diagnosis of cancer, losses can include the loss of the normal daily routine, the impact of the diagnosis on the family, the financial impact of the diagnosis, the loss of the certainty that your child is healthy and safe. The grieving process varies from person to person, and in terms of the reactions of grief as well. And it takes time, once again, for the grieving process. Everyone is very different in the way that they experience it. Siblings, other family members, So normal responses to grief are described as stages, but not everyone experiences all possible reactions, all the experiences in a particular order. So grief can be, as you see here, so many different feelings, and it's not just feelings, it impacts on us physically, mentally, socially, spiritually, and emotionally, of course. So the different feelings there. Survivor guilt, can't focus on anything, wanting to be with others, panicky, and questioning, asking why, being afraid to go back to the place where trauma happened, unable to cope, shocked and stunned, wanting to accuse or blame. There is no right or wrong way to experience grief. So your grief is like a fingerprint. It's unique and personal to you. And some people say that grief is like a wave. And it can catch you unaware. It can pick you up and throw you around. You can feel like, okay, you're just in the calm of the water again, and then you're back in it. It's unexpected, it's scary, it can be numbing and paralyzing, it can be overwhelming, and at times feel really out of control. So our capacity to grieve from loss depends on lots of different things. So it can be our personality, it can be social norms, scripts, the way that we have seen grief role modelled in our families. It can be cultural values, rituals and customs, our upbringing, education, gender, male versus female, our previous experiences of loss and grief, closeness of relationship to that person. They all will have an impact on our capacity and how we grieve. And it's really important to remember that the intense feelings of sorrow, pain, confusion, guilt, anxiety, and anger are all normal experiences of grief. So grief is a natural human process. It is the way you gradually adjust your life to the reality of what had happened, even if you don't like or want to accept what has happened. And I think the importance of talking about and understanding the grief process, that it affects everyone, that it's natural and normal as said on the screen. It's the way we adjust to loss. While there are similarities in the way people grieve, everyone is different in the way they grieve. Learning about the different reactions you may experience can be encouraging when you feel discouraged or really overwhelmed. Like I said earlier, sometimes going back to that framework, it just gives you that sense of normalizing it, what you are feeling, instead of feeling like there's something wrong with you, or it's just, yeah. So grief is exhausting. It has no rules and no timetable. The better we can understand the process of grief, the more we are able to cope with our loss and heal our pain. And grief for a significant loss will always be a part of your life. I'll go on to the cycle of grief. It takes time. There's no set timetable to work through it. And gradually over time we adjust to our loss and start to build new ways of living around what's happened. And here's a diagram of how we can go in and out of loss orientated to restoration orientated. The grief work, intrusion of grief, breaking bonds, ties, relocation, denial, avoidance of restorative changes, and then adding to life changes, doing new things, distraction from grief, denial, avoidance of grief, new roles, identities, and relationships. Grief is a very personal thing. People express it, like I've said, in different ways, and it's more like a cycle or going in and out of weaving rather than it has been referred to in the very beginning as being linear. There was Elizabeth Kubler-Ross talked about the 5 stages of grief, but we look at it more nowadays as being more of a cycle rather than a straight line, and that we weave in and out of it, so we can go backwards and forwards between the different stages. It doesn't mean that we are going to go through the stages one after the other. So this here is also a diagram about different losses that we experience, and then the different stages that we can go through. And once again, it isn't necessarily that we go through one after the other, and we may not experience them as they so I'll talk about the stages that we can go through with grief. And the first stage is shock and denial. With shock and denial, it's like there's a grace in denial. It's nature's way of letting in only as much as we can handle. So it's a way, it's like a buffer to help us through the immediate shock of loss. And it's like a temporary response that carries us through the first waves of pain. So denial and shock help us to cope and make survival possible. Then there's the anger and guilt stage. And anger is a necessary stage of the healing process. The stage of grief is when we search for blame, we experience intense guilt and lash out. As the numbing effect of the denial wears off, the pain of the loss starts to take hold, and we may not be ready to deal with the reality of the situation. So we express our intense pain as anger. And anger can be one of the most confusing feelings. There's two parts to the anger. There's the part of not being able to prevent what has happened, and a sense of helplessness. As parents, you may feel angry with each other, especially if you've had different ways of coping with your child or young person's illness. You may feel angry with family or friends who may not say or do the right things, or are too busy to support you. And I've written down some tips for dealing with anger. And the first one is to honor your anger by allowing yourself to be angry. And sometimes that can be challenging, because along with that, we can feel guilt as well, that we shouldn't be feeling this way. But it's really important just to allow ourselves to honor that, to know that that is a part. It's a normal feeling that comes with that, with our grief. And exercise is another really good one. Talk, if you can connect and share and talk with others, that's always really, really important. And the next part of that is the guilt. And the guilt can be really, really hard, a really hard emotion to manage or to know what to do with. And guilt is very common for parents to feel guilty. It's like doubting yourself, like, did I do the right thing? If it was something they did or didn't do, did I create the cancer? Am I being punished? Many parents have really strong feelings of guilt. And it's really important to remember that you are not responsible for causing your child's cancer, but that's a really hard emotion to go through and try and manage. And the tip for that one, I think the really important thing again in there is to reach out and talk to people that support you, people that you trust around you, and it may be others going through a similar journey that you can talk and share with them, so you can understand that you are not alone, that like others are also going through similar feelings. So it's understanding you are not alone in how you are feeling, and others are experiencing the same. The bargaining stage of grief. My mind is filled with the what ifs, and sometimes that what ifs is easier than facing the pain. So bargaining is the what if stage of grief. And again, it's a normal part of grieving. It has an important purpose, and that's to provide the temporary escape from the pain and provide some hope. it helps give us time to adjust to the reality of the situation. So again, that's a bit like a buffer. And then we go into the depression and despair stage. And my sadness feels like a bottomless pit. It feels like it will last forever. The depression and despair stage of grief occurs when the reality of our loss really sinks in. It's after the bargaining, our attention moves to the present, and those present feelings get stronger. Grief enters our life on a much deeper level. That more than what we can imagine, and that intense sadness, decreased sleep, loss of appetite, loss of motivation are all really common parts of what people experience when going through this stage. And some tips for dealing with that is to give yourself permission again to feel your feelings, to express to somebody else again, to try and reach out and connect and get that support for yourself. Even setting small goals, if that's possible. And again, ask and accept support from family, friends, and if possible, to look for some support groups that you can also turn to. If you feel the pain of the loss is so constant and severe that it stops you from resuming your daily life, then you may be needing to, it will be really important then to seek professional advice, either talk with your doctor or somebody from your support group. Perhaps it is the family support coordinator, someone that you can trust. And the last part of the stages is called acceptance and hope. Acceptance is a process that we experience. It's not a final stage with an end point. And that's kind of how it can feel at times, but it's not. It's about, finding acceptance, maybe just having some more good days than bad. So it isn't a final stage and it isn't an end point. In the acceptance and hope stage of grief, it's accepting the reality of our loss and that we recognize that it is permanent. It doesn't mean that we are over it or it's okay. It's just about trying to learn to live with it. And it is the new norm which we must learn to live with. And it's finding a way forward in that. In this stage of grief, we get more glimpses of hope eventually. And then eventually the hope will outweigh the discouraging feelings. So this is finding the light over the holidays. And this is really about trying to find, so finding the light over the holidays is really about the light may be for some a heightened sense of peace and acceptance. For some it might be finding a balance between sadness and hope. For some it might be finding one or two things that they can enjoy during that time. And that's okay. It's like acknowledging to yourself, this is all that I can do, and that's okay. And for some it may be just surviving and just getting through that time and then being thankful when it's over. It'll be whatever it is for you and what's best for you. Because just as there is no way to experience loss, there is no way to find your way through. There's no right way or one way to find your way through this holiday time. It'll be what is right for you. And looking at the best way to face this time with the holidays, an important part again is acknowledging your emotions and having realistic self-expectations. So not being really hard on yourself and feeling like you have to please everyone or you have to go to this or that to try and keep everyone happy. But it's really important to acknowledge what is best for you and what you can manage, and then that's okay. So acknowledging your because this is the time of year that's really, really hard and really challenging. For many, the holidays are the toughest because when we have lost someone, it can be the first for many without that person, and the following years can be really hard. And when it comes to holidays and celebrations like Christmas, that can be really testing. So with being able to make a plan is really important as well, so that you can only do what you feel like you can manage and not put too much onto yourself. So the most part is to recognize that will be really difficult for you, and those realistic expectations, again, they'll go a long way, because it frees you up from that unnecessary sense of having failed to please those around you. Like I said earlier, be honest with how you are feeling, and not that I should be feeling happy and I should feel this way, but just it's okay for how you are feeling. At this time, all you really have to do is just accept and acknowledge the feelings you are having. And in turn, if you can let others know how they can best support you through this time too, it can then make that clear and take that responsibility off them, of feeling like they've got to help for you to have a good time, and that can actually put more pressure on you as well. So when we can be honest with others about what we need to, that's always helpful. But above all, be gentle with yourself and don't expect too much. And if you are a parent, you may feel like you need to put on a brave face, but it's okay to feel sad and show grief, because avoidance can make us feel worse in the long run. And for children, it's important that they see it's okay to be sad, and it gives them permission to express their feelings. So let them know, however they are feeling is fine, and they don't need to hide it. And just awareness too for children that they go in and out of grief. So it's very normal for them to take comfort in wanting to play. That is their natural state. So they may have times of feeling sad, but then other times of wanting to play. So coming to making a plan, if you can make a plan ahead of time and communicate, like I said earlier, about people with what you are wanting, this always is really helpful, because it takes away apprehensions of what may be happening, like knowing how much time you want to spend with others and how much time you may want to have to yourself is invaluable in making plans for the holidays. And those plans, it may be, if possible, to surround yourself with those people that are really supportive, and decide if you want to carry on with certain holiday traditions or if you want to create new ones. And the big part into that is asking for support when you need it, and remembering your support system over that time as well. So so don't, if you possible, don't isolate yourself, and once again try and surround yourself with supportive people that are good for you, and remembering that no matter what you do at this time, that it is going to be hard, but the power of planning will possibly make you feel like you have a little bit more control over that. And these are common grief responses that we went over a little bit earlier, and all the anxiety and panic, confusion, which is a really big thing, difficulty making decisions, guilt, again, resentment, despair, bitterness, anger at self and others, the helplessness, and then the bodily distress that comes in with the headache, stomach upset, chest pains, depression, sadness, difficulty sleeping, loss of appetite, questioning, and the denial, shock and disbelief. So this is the same: if you can make meaning, then you can accommodate, and if you can accommodate, then you can adjust. And when you adjust, you can go on to live a normal and reconciled life. So this is when grief hits home. So again, I put up there as the important part is looking after yourself. So one of the best ways to help your children is to ensure you are taking care of yourself too. And that children need us to teach them how to grieve, and again, asking for help. So taking care of yourself first and foremost. While your first impulse will be to protect and comfort your children, it is crucial to seek support for yourself. That's one of the best ways, like I have said on the PowerPoint too, that you can help your child is to ensure, and children, to ensure you are taking care of yourself too. So find good sources of support. It doesn't mean hiding your grief from your children. Rather, it means ensuring you have people around you and activities in your life that will provide comfort. And if you need help or some time to take a break and clear your head, it's about making sure that you ask for that. By getting support, you are role modeling for your children that you about taking care of yourself, and then they can learn about taking care of themselves. And you're also reassuring them that you will have the energy and presence to be there for them. So be prepared to accept help from friends, relatives, and possibly, if needed, mental health professionals, or it could be your support team that you have around you with the Child Cancer Foundation and the family support coordinators. So I'll go to the next one. What helps? So these are just some things that you could take time to do, which are always little good tips to have around. And I just had a little part about parents often find it hard to express their grief and fears with each other because there's so much stress and everything else going on, that they can often bottle up feelings, and there can be more tension and arguments than usual. And I think it's important to realise that different people have different ways of coping with stress, and what helps one may irritate another. So one parent might want to talk a lot about what's happened, and the other may want to just get on and try and get back to normal as possible. So either way is how it is for that person, and it's trying to be as open as possible and supportive and patient with each other as possible, because once again, everyone has a different way of coping and grieving, and no one way is the right way. And if possible, try and take time out to spend with your partner in such a stressful situation. It does place a lot of strain on your relationship, and having breaks is really important. And family and friends, grandparents, aunts, uncles, other close relatives and friends often have similar reactions to those of the parents of the child with cancer, and they may find it difficult to cope with how they feel. Family and friends will want to help as much as possible, but they may not always know what to do. There may be the odd person who reacts in a way that you may not have expected, but overall most people's intentions are good and they want to help. So you may need to ask and guide them what that help looks like, or how most useful that will be for you. So be specific if you can, and ask for help, because people often won't know what to say or do. And these again comes into the sense of loss for a child. I'll just go back and look at it again here. So I'm taking the time and what to do, and I've got some more things I've got in front of me about things that help. Accept your own feelings, let yourself cry, talk with someone, have a laugh, check out the stages of grief, let yourself feel what you are feeling, and the feeling will pass. Express your feelings, talk to someone. You might want to journal. Take time out if you can. It may be just going for a walk. Be patient with yourself. Take each step at a time. Stay connected to others and accept support, like we've said earlier, from friends, family, and support networks. This will reduce your sense of isolation and loneliness that can come with grief. Know that you are not alone, and reach out to others. Some may be good at supporting you and may not know what to say, but will understand what you're going through. And if, as much as you can, try to eat healthily, exercise, and prioritize daily tasks to only what is essential. So we'll come on to look at children and how they experience grief. So to get a sense of what a loss means to a child, ask her about it. Listen carefully to what she says, watch her playing, and notice how she is behaving. And these are the different feelings of children and grief. So lots of different feelings here. Angry, nervous, ears full of cotton wool, goosebumps, shaky, muddled, sad, bad. And what to do to for grieving children, to support children. A big part is the reassurance and affection. Routine is another really important part. Children respond really well to that. They feel safe when they know everything's predictable and the same. And children grieve in bursts, is what I said earlier, like they may be sad one moment and then off playing the next. And that is how they grieve and process their grief. And then help to externalize the grief, and I'll touch a little bit more on that. And then keeping boundaries is another really important tool to use with children or to support them through their grief. So talking with children and being honest and sharing age-appropriate explanations for what is happening is really important, because then they understand. Their imaginations are normally very vivid, and they'll be going off and imagining all kinds of things. So when they have the right information that is age-appropriate, it just helps them to feel safe and feel like, okay, they know what's going on, and then they can get on and do what they need to do. It just gives them that reassurance. Provide comfort and lots of cuddles. Reassurance about your distress or sadness, so they can understand it is not something that they have done wrong or something that they have done to upset you, but it is how you are feeling. Because a lot of the time with young children, they're in that egocentric stage of development. So it's very much about their world, and what happens is something that they have done to create that. So that just that reassurance that it's nothing that they have done wrong. It's just that it is how you are feeling. Supporting them to understand that sadness, anger, guilt, feeling scared are all normal feelings. Most importantly, you will be their biggest role model in how you are modeling expressing your feelings, and that's what they will pick up and see. And as that says here, carrying on as much as possible with a normal daily routine, because that is really important, that consistent routine. Remembering that play is a child's natural way to process and work out what is happening for them. That is how they work things out, is through play. And boundaries, keeping boundaries, but also understanding that you will get naughty behaviours, or they can be a way that the child is expressing their grief. This is where it is helpful for you to make guesses out loud what they may be feeling. So naming it for them helps them to have the language to express their feelings, because children don't always have that language to or put into words how they're feeling. So if you can make guesses what you think may be happening for them and put it into words, that's really, really helpful for them. That just helps them to feel like you understand, and also that they know that it's okay. So teens and grieving, they need acceptance and respect, people to listen, understanding, empathy, to be able to do it their way, friends to be with, which is really important, and friends who believe in them. They need their time and space, and definitely not endless advice, and non-judgment, and people to listen. So adolescence, what teens are going through too with adolescence is a really big time of changes. They've got physically, they've got big changes psychologically, emotionally, socially, and spiritually. They're already dealing with a lot at that age, and it's a time of their emerging independence. So they have an increased sense of self, they are seeking who they are and where they fit in the world. Their friends and the outside world are very important, and they will look to their peers for support. That's where they will turn. So going through cancer at this stage and age can be really challenging for them, because already they're trying to manage all of the changes that are happening for them in being a teenager, let alone trying to manage all the big changes that come with them, and all the stresses that the cancer brings for them as a young person. And this can be really, really hard for them at this age. So what they need is support and encouraging expression of feelings. It's finding a person that they feel like they can connect to and turn to and talk to, which is really, really important. So that could be family, someone in the family, parents, or outside support. Confidentiality with teenagers is really, really important, and answering all their questions honestly, and keeping them informed and consulted, so they feel like they are a part of what's going on and they have a say, a voice. Supporting independence as much as possible. So again, it's giving them the appropriate information, allowing them to have a say and control as much as possible. Say what they may want others to know, how much they want to share. And all of that is about so they can feel like they have some control over what's happening for them. And respect and space to allow them to grieve in the way that they need to grieve is really important. So one of the most important things we have learned from children is that everyone grieves differently. Cultural traditions, religious beliefs, family experiences, and personality differences all influence the way we choose to express our grief. So once again, the importance of that. And these are embracing memories. And this is a part of coming up to the holiday season too, which is really, really important, is embracing our memories, and remembering is a part of grieving, a big part of grieving, and a part of healing. So talking, sharing stories about our loved one, lighting a special candle, creating a memory book with perhaps not just photos, it could be poetry, writings, bits and pieces that you may have collected. Just perhaps it's also visiting special places where you have memories of good times together, and it could be just something simple like placing a special decoration on the tree. They're all really important at that time, or this time of year coming up. And this is kind of like holiday rites. So it's like you have the right to anticipate and plan ahead, to make your own decisions, to do something totally different, to decide with whom you would like to spend time with, to be kind to yourself, the right to have a roller coaster of emotions, the right to do something for others, the right to be able to laugh and have fun without guilt, and the right to change your mind at any time, and the right to include your loved one through rituals like lighting a candle and sharing stories. Okay, so that's coming to the end of the presentation, which is a little bit, I'm just checking to see a little bit ahead of time. I was probably raced through that. So here are some support. So this is Skylight, which provide counselling, support packs, support groups, resources, and then also really important to remember about the support you can get through your family support coordinator. And encourage does not always roar. Sometimes it is the quiet voice at the end of the day saying, I will try again tomorrow. Okay, so questions. So I'll go to the Q&A, and I know it's a little bit early because I think that wasn't meant to be happening right now. We'll go and have a look, and I've got some questions that have already been sent in. So I'll just come to here, press on that. Open. Okay. So I'll just go over some questions that came through earlier, and I'll read them out and just answer them as best as I can. The first question was, we are trying to deal with the grief of our daughter. I'll just come out of this, see if there's any more. Who is experiencing losing her hair, and generally not looking like she used to. And again, her ongoing fear of dying. And I think that's really, really hard, and really hard for her at that age as well. She's a teenager. And I think already what I said earlier in the slides, that already at that age, they're trying to manage all the big changes that are taking place for them. And that is one that is really challenging around, like the loss of how she used to look would be really, really hard for her, and trying to manage that. And I thought one resource or one organisation that I looked up and like I know about anyway, and that is a really great support for young people, is Canteen. And I know in Canteen that they will have young people there that have gone through very similar journeys. So there may be someone there that she could talk to and support her. They have peer support called Connectors. They're a team of older members who have walked the journey, and they are trained to support young people. So I wondered how that might be for her to get in contact with them. And that may help for her to understand, or for them to share their stories too, which is always really reassuring and quite powerful too, to know that you're not the only one, and it just normalizes it a little bit more for her, because struggling with that loss of her old self and that change in her appearance, is really, really hard as a young person. So, and I wondered too, with that, with her ongoing fear of dying, if there was someone that she may be able to connect with, perhaps it could be a counsellor or someone through the Child Cancer Foundation, that may be able to support her, and so that she could talk that through with somebody. I think that may be really important for her, just to support her in that, and managing that. I'm not sure if I answered that, but yeah, that's the first question. Thank you for your question too. And I hope that I've answered it and given you a little bit more that might be useful or helpful. And then the next question that came through was how to manage guilt of having a sick child. I know I need to put boundaries in place, but it's really, really hard for me to do. It's really hard for me to do. And how can I cope better when people approach my son and ask him about his illness? I'll just click that out. I clicked out of that. Sorry. And guilt, again, I think, like I said earlier in the presentation, guilt is a really hard emotion to manage. And when your child, it's really, really hard. And it can penetrate through everything, and it's really hard. It makes us second guess ourselves. It makes us, and when you're saying about really hard to put boundaries in place, we will we'll overcompensate because we're trying to protect, and we can let rules go. So it is really challenging and really hard, especially if you're really tired and you've got lots of things going on and you're trying to manage. Looking after your child alone on its own is really, really huge, let alone trying to do everything else. But I know with children that they respond really well to structure. And it can be confusing for them if you're changing kind of your rules that you used to have, and they can actually feel a little bit more confused and unsure and a bit more scared. So if you can, as much as possible, try and maintain the same family routine that you had before your child became ill. And this will be reassuring for you and the child in the end, and it'll take pressure off you as well. And I think it's really important at this time too, and I know it's easier for me to say, but to look after yourself, to make sure that you give some time for yourself as well. I think that's really, really important. It's getting that balance back again. And if you can get back on track with the routine and the boundaries, I think you will feel better, and it'll be better for everyone in the end. And asking, and how can I cope better when people approach my son and ask him about his illness? I wondered how it would be for you to sit down with him. I'm not sure how old he is, but if he is old enough to understand, if you sat down with him and asked him what he might want people to know about his illness, and then ask him, does he want to answer them when they ask, or would he prefer you to? So maybe you and him together could come up with something that he could say, or you could both say. So kind of like a story, so you're both prepared and you have that, so it doesn't catch you off guard. And then he has a say on what he would like to say, and yeah, and then he has more control. I hope that answered your question. Yeah, and it's hard. So I have the last one that I got through, and I can see some questions are coming up too, and I'll try as best as I can to answer those for you. This one, the next one that came through was, how do I cope and get over the feelings of guilt? And once again, that guilt can be really, really powerful. Not trying hard enough, and the what ifs, a constant struggle of second guessing. Your decisions that you made for your child, on days when things are going good, guilt comes back and you miss them so much. So that constant struggle of second guessing your decisions that you made for your child, and the what ifs and the guilt. I think this is really, really hard. And it sounds like, a loss of a child is the hardest loss to bear. And I think that the loss of a child at any age is the most profound and difficult and painful experience we can go through. And guilt and self-blame are particularly intense with the loss of a child. So I think in what I'm reading with what your question, to me, that's really the grieving, and the guilt is a big part of that, of the grief, and the blaming yourself, the what ifs, I should have, could have. It's really, really hard, and that second guessing, it's important. Like, it's that being really hard on yourself, but guilt is a normal grief emotion, and guilt is a part of that. It's a really hard part, but it's a part of the grief process. So if I think I would, if possible, and it's important to remember that you weren't responsible for causing your child's cancer, and you made the best decisions that you could have made at that time for your child. but it's still really hard because that guilt can come and go. And I know, but I think if you could, I don't know if you already are, but if you could try to talk to others that have gone through a similar journey as you, just that connecting and talking with others and getting that support can make a really big difference. It's like then you know it's not only you, that you're not on your own trying to manage all of this. It normalizes what you're experiencing as well. And if you feel really stuck and that this is really hard and it's keeping you stuck, I would recommend that it would be really good to talk to a trained professional like a counsellor to help support you through this part of your grieving. I think that could be really useful and helpful for you. Or get in contact if you have with your doctor or someone that you know that you could guide you onto a person that you could connect with to help you through this. But it's really, really hard. I think I just want to acknowledge how hard that would be. So thank you for your question. I'm not sure if I've answered that what you were expecting, but yeah, I think that getting support and that connecting with others would be really valuable. Okay, so I've got some questions that have come up on the screen. So the first question is how, and I'll try to answer them as best as I can. How do you deal with people that always tell me how much they miss my son? Yeah. That would be really, really hard. Because you're already trying to, I imagine, cope with it, with your own grief and trying to manage and get through. And I wonder how that is for you. Like if, you know, this is just me guessing, if that feels like that you have to carry their feelings as well. I'm not sure if that just makes it harder for you. So how do you deal with people that always tell me how much they miss my son? I think it could be that you, perhaps it's like finding a way that you can, what you could tell yourself, almost like be prepared to have something that, so you feel like you're prepared and you've got something to say. How do you deal? Yeah. That's really, really hard. And it's hard because I think I'm struggling because I'm answering it like this, but there would be lots of things I think I'd like to ask you about that. But I think it would be really hard for you when they do that because it just puts you back into that place and it doesn't make it any easier for you. So maybe there's something you can come up with in a really, it doesn't have to be confrontational, but maybe in a way that you could just let them know what's best for you. So if that is really upsetting for you and it's just too hard and too much, a way that you can let them know that. I don't know if that would work or not. I don't know how effective I was in answering your question, I'm sorry, but I think that is hard. Yeah, and I think maybe a way that you could come up with so that you don't feel like you are going back to that space all the time. And it could be just two words or something that you could say. And if you can plan ahead, that is sometimes it just makes you feel like more in control of that. So it doesn't put you back into that place. Okay. I don't know if that was helpful. So the next question is, my husband and I are both looking after our son through his cancer journey and dealing with our grief in our own ways. But we seem to have a disconnect in how we can support each other. And that's a really normal part too, when with different people and with partners and parents going through loss and grief as well. And what can we do to protect our marriage from our individual grief getting in the way of feeling bonded? Yeah, it's a really important question too. And I think, and I know I touched briefly on it in the presentation. Again, it's that understanding that and I know I can hear that's what you are aware of, that you're dealing with your grief in your own ways. But there seems to be that disconnect in how we can support each other. And I think that's the challenge and that's the struggle. It's the understanding that each one of us grieves in a different way, and it may look like that person is removed or a bit more disconnected, but that will be how they are experiencing and processing their grief. So I think the importance in this is communication, as much as you can, to try and communicate with each other what's happening. I think that's the protection. When you say, what can we do to protect our marriage from our individual grief getting in the way of feeling bonded, I think that communication is key. When we are going through really stressful times, we can go off and do our own thing in the way of trying to manage and cope. And then that can create that distance. And to me, the key in that is being able to communicate and talk with each other what's happening, and then work out a plan. It could be planning just very small things that you were doing or used to do that you can do together again to create that bond or to keep that bond. I think that that is always the key, is communicating and trying to let each other know what's going on, because at times we make assumptions, and just trying to look after each other, be patient with each other, and I think if you can spend or make some time that you can have that time to connect. And it's like I said before, it's just the little things. It could just be very small things, because you may not be able to go off and do big things together or have that time, but it could just be the small things that make the difference, and just checking in with each other. I think just that checking in, how are you going along, is really important as well, especially going through that time. And when it's really stressful like that, we can get really busy with everything else and then become more isolated and disconnected. So it's just working hard on that checking in, the communicating, and trying to set a plan together of just small things that you can do to keep that connection. And it's and distraction, and to look forward to things, and just to have a little bit of that fun back again, even if it's in small parts. And it's looking out for each other. Don't know if that was helpful, but okay. I think that's all the questions that I can see on the page. I think there are some more. I'll just have a look and see. Okay, another question has just come through. my daughter was diagnosed early this year, and every day I still think a lot about how did this happen, thinking about the scans, surgery, etc. Every day, what are some coping strategies to stop going over things in my mind all the time? That's a really important question too. Some practical strategies to support you. So, so that's just not long been really when with the diagnosis and every day, yeah, how did this happen? So what are some coping strategies to stop going over things in my mind all the time? Because that can be really challenging too. It's learning, there are things you can, there are tools you can learn to be able to, it's kind of like contain those thoughts so they don't keep going over and over, because that really pulls us down, and once it starts, it's really hard to stop too. It's like our brain keeps going, it keeps going around, and yeah, it's really hard to slow it down and to stop it. So coping strategies. Just have a moment to think. I think the first step, and that sounds like that you are very aware, the first step is the awareness, is awareness and acknowledging those thoughts. And it sounds like to me you are, you have that awareness. So then it's taking that awareness and being like, when they're starting to come again, it's like, okay, there's that thought again. You know, like it's almost like putting up a stop sign saying, okay, I don't, yeah, like you, yeah, the stop sign, so that you know that, okay, the stop sign means that it's not going to keep going over and over, that's it. So that can work. I'm not answering this very well, so I'm just trying to think, what are some coping strategies to stop going over? It's the awareness, and you would have heard of it, I'm sure, it's the mindfulness. So in mindfulness, it's about being aware of the thoughts, and sometimes it is like the stopping, and other times it can be like, people will liken it to seeing the thoughts going past like clouds. So it's like putting them into a cloud shape and just watching it go past, and not, but you've taken a step away from them, so they're not, that you're taking them out of your head and putting them over here. So it's like an externalizing them. So you're putting them out here, so that away from you, and you're just watching them go past. And once that's it, they're gone, kind of. So it's like clouds, and watching clouds go, and then the thought is inside the cloud, and then you can watch it and it's gone off into the distance. And that helps in the way that it takes it away from you, and it puts it out there, and then it's easier to manage. I know I'm kind of rambling on because I'm trying to think on the spot, but I know that can work with some people. So it's like you take a step away from your thoughts, and you are watching your thoughts, or you're being a watcher of your thoughts, rather than they are all intertwined and a part of you. So there's sometimes it can be writing things out. That's the same thing. It could be writing out all the things that you're worrying about, and putting them somewhere. And you know, once you put them in that container, that you're not going to go back to that container. That's where they're going to stay for now. It could be journaling. Journaling is another way that can help you to get things out when they keep going over and over in your mind. It's finding ways to be able to get things out, so they're not in your head, if that makes sense. So there's the journaling, there's the writing them all down and putting them in a container, some like away. there's the putting them into clouds so they're floating past and they're not up there. You've put them, they're not in you, you're watching them go past. So you're like a spectator or an observer. I'm not sure about the stop sign one, if that would really work, but that is one that people can use. I think I've rabbited on enough, sorry about that. Yeah, because I think that's a really hard place to be in. It's about taking control again and not letting those thoughts take control, because that's what can happen. It can feel like that they just take over, and it becomes overwhelming. So it's trying to, as much as you can, take back some of that control. And one thing I learned too is the what ifs. You know, thinking ahead in the what ifs is really, really hard as well, because we don't have a lot of control over that. We don't know we don't have the control over the what ifs, so that can be really hard, and it can be anxiety ridden as well. So as much as you can, if you can, and know it's challenging, it's trying to get back right to the present moment and just managing and coping with what you are right here and right now. And that way you can be in control and in charge of this, what is happening right here. But when the other comes into it, that becomes really overwhelming and too much. So that's another way of trying to manage it, is to just look at what's happening right here and right now and managing that, and just trying to let the other go for now and focusing on the here and the now. Okay. I think that's the only questions that there are. I'll just check. I think we're nearly coming to a close. I can't see any more questions. I'll just do another check. I think I can't see any more questions, but I just want to thank everyone for watching, and again, I just want to thank everyone for being able to be a part of this and to present this presentation. And I hope that there have been parts of this that may have connected with you, or parts of it that may be useful for you. I know it's a brief overall look at grief, and I know it's a lot more detailed and there's a lot more that you can go into. So yeah, I just want to thank you for your participation and for the people that have sent in the questions. Yeah, hopefully you have been able to take something from that.